Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everybody to this interactive Lianza webinar, and thank you for joining us. My name's Helen Heath. I'm the comms advisor at Lianza and I'm assisting Anne today. So we'll just start with a karakia. Tukua te wairua, kia rere, ki ngā taumata, he arahahi, i a tātou mahi. Me ta tātou wha i ngā tikanga a rātou mā. Kia mau, kia ita, kia kore ai I ngaro, kia pupuri, kia whakamaua, kia tina, hui e, taiki e. So welcome to Anne Goulding. Anne's a Professor of Library and Information Management at Victoria University, her research interests primarily are in the area of management of library and information services. And her main focus is on the management of public libraries. She's got a particular interest in how library and information services demonstrate the impact of their programs and services, which at Lianza that's very important. In recent years, Anne's undertaken research into storytime programs in public libraries and how they contribute to community-based print and digital literacy. And she's also got an interest in teaching and learning in the information studies field, including continual professional development of librarians and information workers, which is lucky for us, which was probably one of the reasons she's here today. And she's also editor of the Journal of Librarianship and Information Science, which is one of the foremost journals in the librarianship field. So we're really lucky to have her here today. She's widely published in refereed journals and edited works, and has given conference presentations on the topic of public library services. So she's terrifically placed to be leading this workshop today. So welcome to everybody. We've got participants from all over the country today, like I said earlier, tertiary, public, special, and hopefully you've all named yourselves and your organisations, so that's fantastic. We're a small group today, but that's good, so we'll probably have a chance to actually have some interaction. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. If you keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking, it just helps reduce the amount of background noise. And also we'll send out a short survey after the workshop and we'd really appreciate any feedback that you've got. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Anne.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Helen. Tēnā koutou katoa. Nice to see you all. I recognise some names, so it's nice to see you. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about writing abstracts and proposals for conferences. So as Helen said, I have attended a few conferences in my time and spoken at conferences, and I've also been on conference program committees as well. So I've seen the abstracts that come in. Yeah, I've got a bit of a background in this, and yeah, we'll just go through a few ideas. Again, you know, we are a small group, so I'm quite willing to be interrupted. So if you want to interrupt me, either, you know, just talk, or there's a chat, although it's quite difficult sometimes to keep your eye on the chat and slides and things like that. So it's probably better actually if you just unmute and talk. Yeah, so happy to answer any questions, raise any issues you'd like to. Would be interesting to hear of your experience. So I'm just going to share my screen because I've got some slides, as you might expect. Let's do this one. Okay. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Sorry, I'm just going to stop sharing and do that again because now my windows are all messed up. Let's try this instead. Okay. It's exactly the same. Doesn't matter. It just means I'll be looking. So I might be looking somewhere else as I am presenting. No worries. Oh, there we go. That's a bit better. Okay. So yeah, let's have a think about conference proposals and abstracts. So this is what we're going to be covering. We're going to talk about how you find a conference that you'd like to go to, how you find those calls for papers, yes, CFPs as we call them, calls for papers, and then how you respond. All right, so what you need to do to respond to a CFP, and how you prepare your abstract and proposal to ensure that it's selected for conference. because that's what we're all aiming to do, isn't it? Okay, so let's have a think about what are your experiences of submitting abstracts, presenting at conferences? Does anybody have any experience of that? Would anybody like to share their experiences? Any thoughts about that? Oh, something in chat. Ah, okay, so Donna's presented a poster. Ah, yes, because of course we're not just talking about, giving the conventional presentations at conferences. There are also posters, there are workshops, there are discussions. There's a whole range of different formats of papers or presentations that you can give at conferences. Kai hasn't, but would like to soon. Okay, so good. Hopefully you'll get some tips from this session. Has anybody had kind of, I don't know, good experiences, perhaps worrying experiences, or not quite sure, confusing experiences? Ah, right, another one at Lianza. So obviously, Zoe, you had to submit an abstract and that was accepted, yeah? Emma, do you want to talk? You're highlighted.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Great. Hey, I've submitted and also presented at Lianza, and I think it was a brilliant experience. Probably the biggest thing for me is that the abstract and the article itself was much more formal than the actual presentation.
Yeah.
So I found that really interesting. It wasn't just a straight transcription of what you were saying in front of people.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And as we will discuss, your abstract is really to catch people's attention. Yeah. So that's kind of, you want to get all the information in there to get people to want to come to your presentation. You want to get the committee to want you to present, and then to get the audience to want to come to your presentation. So it is different, isn't it, to the actual presentation. You have to get the information in there and show that you're able to talk on this topic, and that you're able to talk about it in an interesting way as well. So there are a few things that you need to think about when you're trying to fit all that into quite a short number of words. Yeah, 300, 500 words. So it's a lot to think about to pack into that abstract. Ah, yeah, and Donna has submitted to Telsig. Okay. Emma, were you going to say something else? You're highlighted for some reason. I don't. No. Okay. Yeah, so Donna, yeah, so that's coming up, and we'll talk about that because I've got that. I've got a slide with that on. And Kai, okay, the weekend school. Ah, yes, that sometimes happens, but not always, because sometimes, in big conferences or popular conferences like the Lianza conference, for example, you will be kind of fighting for slots there. So you do need to make your abstract as attractive as possible to everybody. But that's quite a nice position to be in, Kai, that you didn't have to disappoint anybody. It's good, that as many people as possible get to present, isn't it? Okay, let's just carry on then. So I think somebody up here said, or was it Emma actually, saying that it was a great experience. And going to conferences is a great experience, isn't it? It helps us professionally, helps our professional learning, and also our network. And it enables us to share our own ideas with our professional colleagues, and to gather ideas as well. So it's an exciting time going to a conference, and you can learn a lot for them. But of course, as we say, first of all, you have to have your paper, your abstract accepted. So let's have a think about this then. On screen. Okay, looking for calls for papers of interest. Has anybody got any tips about this? How did you find out about, you know, some of you have had experience of going to various conferences and things like that. How did you find out about your conferences? How did you find out about them? Listservs, absolutely, yeah. So the Lianza or NZ Libs, listserv, yeah, Lianza pages, of course, good. Twitter, yeah, social media, that's a good point, yeah. Word of mouth, yeah. Being on, yeah, well, being on the committee, that does help. You would know about it, wouldn't you? Yeah. But being asked to perhaps to be part of a committee, that's the other way you learn about it, isn't it? Yep. So a number of ways we can find out about it. So, you know, if you are a member of a professional organization, and of course, you know, Lianza, you know, that's quite easy. You keep your eye on the website, you get emails, you check your listservs. If it's an organization that you're not necessarily a member of, good idea to just keep your eye out for that. Yeah, keep an eye on the website, keep an eye on social media. Yeah, as Donna was saying there, social media, lots of conference announcements are now made on social media, Twitter in particular, I think. So keep an eye on those. And also, if there's a conference that you've come across, you thought, you know, perhaps a past conference, and you think, oh, I'd really like to go to the next one. Again, you know, keep an eye on the website, sign up to their Twitter account. Maybe they've got a distribution list or a mailing list. So just you know, target the conferences that you want to go to, and make sure you're keeping up with what they're doing. You can also run just a general Google search. Oh, I've realized I haven't put this on full screen, have I? There we go. It's a bit better. You might just want to put this, yeah, so do a general Google search. So here's one I did a day or so ago. Not a very good search, is it? I'm sure you can all think of a better search terms and a better search strategy than that, but this was just a quick and dirty one. And so you come up with, so I put 2021. Yeah, because I'm looking at maybe going next year. A lot of these are international. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? Because generally we might be thinking of conferences closer to home because of travel and, you know, the expense of that. But of course, now, you know, COVID in some ways has its upsides for this, doesn't it? Because now we can attend all these international conferences, but remotely. So, you know, you might want to go to an international conference, and these are all, I think, for example, ACRL is an American one. The one at the bottom, Publishing in the Archives Profession, it's something to do with ALA, American Library Association, so again, American. That LibPMC, that looks quite interesting, about performance, yeah, and evaluation. I think that's in the UK. So, you know, it gives us an opportunity a bit, doesn't it, this? As long as you don't mind getting up at some god-awful early hour to participate with people in the Northern Hemisphere, there is that opportunity now. So, for example, IFLA 2021, International Federation of Library Association, they've got, they run every year WILIC, World Library and Information Congress. It was cancelled this year, obviously, because of COVID, but in 2021, it's going to be online. Yeah, it's going to be a virtual. So there's your opportunity. I think the year after that, it's in Dublin, and the year after that, it's in Rotterdam. So Northern Hemisphere, which is a little bit more inaccessible for us, isn't it? So this is a great opportunity to get involved, really. And lots of opportunity to get involved. So this is just part of the page. So they have all these different programs and divisions and sections, and they've also got special interest groups. You know, it's a longer page than I could screenshot. And all of these have calls for papers. Yeah, so each one of these different sections and groups has their own call for papers. So lots of potential to get involved. So again, you know, keep your eye on the website. Check in periodically. The calls for papers usually for IFLA come out around now and up until about February, probably. So in this period, keep your eye on the websites, keep your eye on Twitter, sign up to their mailing lists, yeah, and get involved that way. And we'll have a look at an example of one of their calls for proposals in a little while. Any comments about that, or any questions about calls for papers or finding calls for papers? There are some databases that pull together calls for papers from conferences, but they don't tend to have them in our field. So they're not very good for us. So we really have to do our own kind of searching around. Oh, you can still see the first slide, Donna. Oh, what's happened there? Can everybody else? Is anybody? Oh, I don't know what's happened here. I'll tell you what, I'll stop sharing and share again. Okay.
I think you need to start the slideshow.
I thought I had. I don't know what happened there. Let me try again. Is that working? What can you see now?
We're seeing your Google.
That's it. Okay. So sorry, you've missed some slides. You've missed some slides. So that was my search. Okay, the search I did for calls for papers. That's IFLA. Okay, so as I say, 2021, it's going to be virtual. And these are all the groups and divisions. And as I say, all of these have their own separate calls for papers. Yeah, so lots of opportunity to get involved there. But of course, you know, we're lucky, aren't we, here in Aotearoa, that we can actually meet in person. And in fact, I've noticed over the last few weeks, we've had a few gatherings and conferences and events in the building here at Vic. So it's nice that people can actually get together face to face. And it is better, isn't it? It's far more preferable for all kinds of reasons to get together with your colleagues. So the key conference, as Helen said, the key conference we should be thinking about is this one, yeah, the Lianza 2021. And I believe that the call for papers will be out in around February. So again, just watch this space.
Excuse me, may I just interrupt for a moment?
Yeah.
Just to mention that we've also got the TTGG, Tato Gather and Grow Conference in February,
Yes.
which is a symposium, which is obviously a lot smaller, but we've still received quite a good number of submissions. So your work here is very relevant to us as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Annie. Yeah, we have already mentioned it, and I will show your call for paper in a little while. So that's good. In fact, let's move on to that. So I'll just show you a couple of calls for papers, the kinds of things that they're asking for. So this was one from last year. Gosh, was it only last year, 2019? Kind of lost all sense of time. So this was 2019 from the Law Librarians. And you can see that they've got, you know, quite a clear outline of when it's going to be, yeah, when the conference is going to be, what their theme was. And you can see here abstracts for presentations, because remember we talked about how, you know, there are different types of papers. So you got presentations of either 30 minutes or 45 minutes, but also lightning sessions as well. Yeah, so lightning sessions, if you're a bit nervous, if it's your first time, you could do a quick 10 to 15, although I find it actually much easier to do a longer paper. As you can tell, I quite like talking. So I do find it quite much easier to do a longer paper than a shorter paper. I can't fit everything I want to say into 10 to 15 minutes. Yeah. And gives very clear about how long, you can see how long the abstract should be, outline the main ideas, what format, so whether you're going for the 30, 45 or the lightning sessions, who you send your submissions to and when by, very important, and when you'll hear. Yeah, so that was the Law Librarians. And just talking about TTGG, this was the call that came out there. Again, saying who it's of interest to, what the theme is, and this could be in the areas of listing specific topics, but look at that bottom one, anything else, which is really helpful. Yeah, so this is what we're really looking for. But if you've got something else that's really interesting, we'd love to hear about it. Yeah, so it's always worth looking at that. And if you're not sure, contacting the conference organizer to say, I'm thinking of a paper in this area, does that sound okay? Yeah. And again, guidelines, full presentations and lightning talks again. Annie will be able to tell us more about this perhaps if she's involved, but it's via the Easy Chair system. Okay, so Easy Chair is a conference submission system. Lots of conferences use it, and it's fairly straightforward. Yeah, it's just filling in a form basically with your name and your details, and you can cut and paste in. If you've done an abstract on Word or something, you can cut and paste that in. Yeah, so that it's just a way, an easier way for the conference or committee or organizers to keep an eye on abstracts, who's, you know, where they've gone and who's submitted, etc. Again, quite a clear deadline there, although I think it was extended. I know it was extended in fact, by a week or two, and that's something that happens quite often. So if you think, oh no, I forgot to, you know, apply for that conference, I forgot to put something in, just go and have a look at the website, because you know, more often than not, these deadlines are extended, but you can't rely on it. So aim for the deadline, the original deadline, but if you miss it, sometimes you might have a second chance. Now the next one, so those are two abstracts. The next one is a proposal, and we'll talk about the difference between abstracts and proposals in a little while. So this one was from IFLA Willick 2018, and it's quite a long one, so it runs over 3 slides. Yeah, so this one, you know, it gives you a bit of background, what this topic is all about, what their, you know, what their focus is. Yeah, so the theme is designing inclusive libraries. We invite papers that address, so again, you know, a list of topics or areas that they're interested in. And then again, some very clear guidelines of how to present or how to put in your proposal, how to submit it. Again, you can see at the top, the end of that top paragraph, individual or team presentations, reports of research studies, case studies, panel discussions. So a very wide range of formats you could submit. 2 styles of presentations, 15-minute delivery, so a 15-minute conventional presentation, and Pecha Kucha. Has anybody ever done Pecha Kucha? Oh, fun. Oh, I hated it. Again, I'm not very good at keeping to deadlines, I think, and keeping time. So this is where you have 20 slides. So you provide your slides in advance to the organizer, and they change them for you. And you have to, as it says there, 20 slides. Each slide is shown for 20 seconds. And so you have to keep up with your slides. Yeah, so they're being changed automatically. Yeah. Or probably put on a slideshow, a timed slideshow, and you have to keep up with them. It's really, the only time I've done this is when it was actually at IFLA, and one of my PhD students was meant to be presenting, but he couldn't do it for various reasons. He wasn't able to attend at the last minute. So I had to take over, and I'd never done this Pecha Kucha before, and obviously I hadn't practiced, so it was a bit of a mess, I have to say. I was going too fast on some, and then I'd slow down and be behind, so it's really quite difficult. So it says, you say, this mix of presentation styles keep the open session vibrant and exciting. Well, yes, quite exciting for the person presenting as well. Okay, gives a little bit about the visuals. So the abstracts have to be submitted by, okay, 15th of February. So yeah, so as I say, for IFLA Willick, that's around the time presentation, you know, your proposals are due. And as I say, the calls for papers will probably be coming out fairly soon. if they're not all out already. I don't think they are, but they'll be coming out soon. Tells you when you've been notified and what your proposal has to involve. Now, this one's interesting because you do have to give an abstract. So just like the others, you have to give an abstract as well as, you know, the title, the style, blah, blah, blah. But if you note below, what they call it a proposal because it's a proposal for a full paper. So they want your abstract, but then if you're accepted, you have to write it up as a formal, like a journal article, yeah, a journal paper of 4,000 words. Yeah, so that's why it's called a proposal, yeah, because you're proposing a paper really, as well as a presentation. Any questions about that? Or any points anybody wants to make? So you can see that these calls, they vary in detail and in length, yeah, and you know how specific they are and the direction they give. There's quite a bit of variety there.
I think, can I just ask about the difference between a lightning talk and a pecha kucha? I think people often interchange them.
Yeah, so a pecha kucha, as I say, is you know, the slides move for you. With the lightning talk, you would be in control of that. Yeah.
And the structure
of
either, is there a certain recommended
for the lightning talk or the pecha kucha? No, I don't think so. No. Okay. 20 slides is quite a lot, isn't it? I'd say for a presentation for 6 minutes. You know, so I guess I would suggest not putting very much on each slide. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, sorry, I'm on the wrong screen again. Here we go. All right, so that's step one. We found our call for proposal. We've identified the conference we want to go to. We've found the call for proposal. So now we need to read the call carefully. So obviously it's important that our proposal matches the themes or the topics, although as we saw with the TTGG, there is often this kind of and anything else that might be interesting, which is nice because you can you've got a bit of flexibility there. But as I say, you know, always a good idea to, if you're not very sure, to contact the organizers. Yeah. Some conferences are a bit more flexible, but always a good idea to check. Okay. Make sure you meet the specifications. So as we saw, some are quite directive. Some are a little less directive and a little bit more open, but they'll always tell you, you know, how long your abstract has to be. So make sure you keep within the word limit and make sure you indicate whether it is, for example, a lightning talk or a proper paper or a poster or whatever. Make sure that's clear. So understand which kind of paper you are submitting for and what the expectations are for that. Meet the deadlines. Okay, so often there are a range of deadlines. There might be a deadline, as you saw actually in that IFLA paper, there was a deadline for the abstract and there was also a deadline for the full paper. So make sure you know what the deadlines are and that you meet them. And then you have to prepare the abstract. So I'm just keeping my eye on the chat as well. So Helen says that there are recommended structures for PK. Yeah, I don't think I did that. Well, it wasn't my presentation, it was my students, so I'm not sure if we did that, but I'm sure there are. If you probably a good idea to have a look around, Google it a bit and see, maybe have a look at other examples. That's always a good idea. See if you can, you know, I'm sure YouTube will have some pecha kucha on there, so have a look at some of those. Probably a good idea to guide your own approach to that. Yeah, thanks, Kai. I'm sure. Yeah, I'm not sure I want to repeat the experience, to be honest. Maybe if I'd had some practice. Okay, so let's move on to have a look at this preparing the abstract. So you know, in most cases, your abstract will determine whether you're going to present at the conference or not, and be able to attend the conference. So, of course, it's important that you present a very clear, very concise, and an interesting abstract. Yeah. And we'll have a look at that in a little while. But just to, as I say, I've been using the term abstract and proposals, and there is a difference, although I think they tend to be used interchangeably, but they are theoretically they are different. An abstract is essentially a summary, yeah, and it's a summary of the talk you're going to give, and the abstract that you submit will often appear as is on the conference website or in the conference program. Yeah. Sometimes they ask you to make revisions, you know, but very often it'll just appear as is. Yeah. So it's meant to attract people to your session. Yeah. A proposal, on the other hand, may never actually be seen by the audience. Yeah. Or certainly in the format that you submit it to the program committee. And it's used primarily in sort of peer-reviewed conferences for the program committee or for reviewers to evaluate whether to include your paper in the conference, in the session. So on the basis of that proposal, very often as an author, you'd be given feedback and revisions, yeah, to make, and then you would be asked to provide an abstract or a summary for the conference program or for the website. Yeah. So often proposals are a little bit longer, yeah, and a bit more in depth. And I think we tend to use proposals more in kind of research-oriented conferences. Yeah. So we'll have a look at both, but for both of them, you need a good title. Yeah. For both, you know, abstracts and proposals, the title is your first opportunity to grab people's attention, whether that's the audience or the program committee. Yeah, it's an invitation to read on, isn't it, the title? So you need it to be effective, you need it to be clear, and you need it to be a bit interesting as well. And I don't know what you think, whether what makes for a good title. What do you think? So I have this, all my titles are a bit like this. It's a bit boring, but I often have a sort of interesting bit at the beginning, or a quirky bit, funny bit, with a colon, followed by a bit more clear explanation of what the topic is actually about. Yeah, the title is the hardest bit, Donna. I agree. I'm not very good at thinking up titles. So I think some of these were joint publications. So probably my colleagues thought up these titles, not me. Although that first one, I'm quite proud of that. That is mine, the apps on laps. So yeah, I quite like something like that. I don't know what you think. So apps on location, yeah, and remote, that's a kind of a play on words, because we were talking about distance learning, and we were also talking about Aotearoa, which, you know, is a little bit remote from the from a lot of the rest of the world, which we're very grateful for at the moment. So a bit of a double meaning there. Any other thoughts about titles? It is difficult, I think. But as I say, if you can think of something that'll grab somebody's attention, and then, you know, a bit an addendum to that, which explains really what you're focusing on, that's always a good idea. Okay, titles. It introduces the topic, captures the interest of the reader, should be relatively brief. I think mine were probably a bit long. They usually say between about 10 and 12 words. That bottom one is important, isn't it? Aids discoverability. Yeah. because nowadays, you know, it's all about discoverability, isn't it? So, you know, having a quirky, funny title is all very well, but if nobody's ever going to look for those words, then it's a, you know, nobody's going to find your paper. So it's a good idea to use some words that, you know, people are going to search for. All right, I noticed that we're running out of time, so I will speed on. So abstracts, as I say, this is a brief description of your presentation, but it's also, as I said, a sales tool. Yeah, you're selling your presentation to the audience. And remember, you know, and especially at Lianza, a big conference like Lianza, and IFLA too, a huge conference like IFLA, loads of different sessions going on at the same time, concurrent sessions, and you want people to come to yours. So your abstract has to grab their attention to make them want to come to see you present. So try to make it as fascinating as possible. But you also have to be very clear about what people can expect from your presentation. So, you know, what the aim of your presentation, you know, what's the most, and it's a good idea to begin actually with the most important information or thought or idea. Yeah, to get it right out there to get people's attention. The other aspect is writing it clearly and accessibly. And I think especially for the more sort of practitioner-based conferences, the program committee won't be interested in how beautiful your prose is or how you can wax lyrical about your topic. You know, they're wanting accessible language. So write clearly, write accessibly, define any terms perhaps or jargon that you use or acronyms, make sure that's all really clear. And I've just got a little bit of a structure there that you might want to follow. You know, outline your topic, explain what it's all about, give a little bit of background, say why people should be interested, so what they're going to take away from your presentation. Yeah, and of course link to the theme of the conference. That's really important. So have a look at that call for papers again and see if you can pick out words from the call for papers and put them in your abstract. Yeah. You do have limited words. So, you know, 300, 400, 500 words, sometimes 250 words. I think that was the NZLA one, wasn't it? Yeah. The law librarians, 250 words. So, you know, you might want to keep your key conclusions until the presentation. So it's almost like a teaser. Say, I'm going to talk about this. And I'll tell you what it is if you come to my presentation, kind of thing. Yeah, so, you know, tease them a bit with the kinds of things you're going to talk about. Any comments about that or any questions? Yeah, it is difficult, Donna, you're right. 500's not so bad, but, you know, I'd say 250 is really tight. That's really difficult. And, you know, you say outline your topic, explain the ideas, background, why people should be interested. Getting that into 250 to 500 words is hard. Yeah, it is hard. And that's why I say, you know, write clearly, write accessibly. Don't worry too much about, you know, references, for example, or citations if it's not for an academic conference. A proposal is a little bit different, though, I'd say. As I say, this is for review by the program committee. And, you know, so you really want them to understand, help them understand the goals of your paper and the content of that as well. Yeah, thanks, Kai. You really need to get those key points across. You know, you don't want them to sit there. Well, what is this about? You know, what is this really about? It sounds kind of interesting, but I'm not quite sure what they're saying here. Yeah, you want them to really grasp immediately what your presentation is going to be all about and why it'll be interesting for that particular audience. So again, you've structured your title, a little bit of introduction or background to why it's important, the aims and objectives or aim of your presentation. If it is a research presentation, if it is based on some research, a little bit about the methods you use, but again, I wouldn't go into too much detail on that. and then some findings, but not all of them. Again, I think it's quite nice to leave a little bit of mystery. But the conclusion, summary, discussion, contribution, what people can learn. Yeah, that's really what the program committee will be looking for. What are people going to be learning from your paper? Yeah. So talking about program committees then, this is what they'll be looking for. You know, a really clearly stated purpose and how it fits with the conference theme. Yeah. Topicality, I suspect there'll be quite a lot about COVID in the next few years in conferences. This is the point I was making there, you know, the contribution to the conference and the learning of the audience. Yeah, they'll be looking for something that helps people. Yeah. A little bit of creativity, innovation maybe, and they'll be looking to see whether it's of niche or general interest. And for Lianza, it could be both. Yeah. So, you know, we're a very wide profession, and we do have specific sectors. So it could be just, and often there are streams, aren't there? So it might well be that they stream. So it could be of general interest to the whole profession, or it could be a niche, I don't know, law librarianship. Sorry, I'm not saying they're completely niche, but, you know, it could be on a specific topic. Any points anybody wants to make? Okay, we'll just finish off with a few examples. So this was an abstract I put into IFLA. I think this was the 2018 one. I'm not sure, actually. I'm not sure when this was, but it was, yeah, it was to IFLA, and it was the buildings group or division. So it is more of a practitioner conference, IFLA. So you can see I didn't put any citations there, and I tried to make it a little bit more practical. So what are the practical lessons coming out of this? So saying this paper will, you know, or the aim of this paper is, you know, start off with that so people can quite clearly see what you're on about. Yeah. And just say, you know, what it's considering and what it's, yeah, how I did it, and recommendations at the end there. The next one, so this was one of my students, and it is even though it was at IFLA, actually it was the marketing division, it is a little bit more academic because it is from his PhD study. But again, I think he tried to draw out, you know, the implications for practice. So implications for, I think this was for academic librarians in particular, of using social media. And then the last one is a bit long. So this one is a proposal. So those two were abstracts. This one is a proposal. Yeah, so this is a call for paper. This was the call for papers. So it's from CASE, which is the Canadian Association of Information Science. So it's more research based. Okay, so that's saying, you know, what they're looking for. And here you can see the proposal should be in the form of an extended abstract. So 1,000 to 1,500 words, excluding references, the word count, but they want references in there. Yeah? And this is what we put in. This was myself and my colleague Jennifer Campbell-Meyer. So a little bit of an abstract, an introduction. Actually, it was introduction background, really. The introduction is most of the paper, so perhaps we should have called it background rather than introduction. As you can see, it goes on. It's quite researchy. Yeah. Methodology. So we had some headings, and then at the end we said, this is what we're going to discuss. We didn't actually put any of the results in the proposal. Yeah? A bit of a teaser. Okay, let's just finish off with some final tips, and then we'll maybe have a discussion or some questions. So yeah, as I say, look over previous examples of abstracts and proposals if you can get hold of them, or if you know people who've been to a conference that you want to attend, ask them. You know, people are usually quite generous and quite willing to share their successful abstracts. When you've written it, ask a colleague or two to read over it to make sure it is clear. That's, get some peer feedback. Proofread it carefully before you submit it. Stay within the word limit. And submit on time. Yeah, important that you submit on time, even if they do. It's a bit annoying sometimes when you've killed yourself to get an abstract in on time and then they extend the deadline. But no, they might not extend the deadline, so make sure you do submit on time. Any questions that anybody has, or any points anybody wants to make?
What about if someone comes that you've submitted something and then they come back to you and ask you if you want to make any amendments?
You can do that. I mean, sometimes you're required to make amendments. So especially with some of the research conferences in particular, those proposals, because they will go out to peer review. Yeah, with academic conferences, your proposals go out to peer review. One or 2, 3 people might look at that, and then they'll say, oh, usually with ours, I have to say, they usually say, we want more about this, we want more about the results, put in more of the discussion. We had that with the case one, I think, because we didn't put any results in, because we hadn't really done the analysis at that point, so we were kind of making it up as we went along. So often they'll come back and say, we want more about this, or, have you looked at this? So you will get the opportunity there to revise, or you will be asked to revise. So yeah, working on feedback is always a good idea. Yeah.
Kai in the chat asks, is ranking mostly done by relevance to the conference or something else?
Oh, do you mean when by the program committee? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, so mostly it is about relevance to the conference theme. So that's why I say it's important to pick up on some of those key words if you can and use them. But also, I think if somebody comes up with something very novel, very topical, very interesting, then they might bend the rules a little bit to include that. Any other questions? So we're just about out of time, aren't we?
Got about 10 minutes.
Oh, have we? I thought it was 1:50. I was rushing then. So if anybody wants me to go back to any of the slides, I'm quite happy to do that if we've got a few more minutes.
And how long would you normally put aside for writing an abstract?
Well, if you are working off work that you've already done, you could do it in a day, I'd say. If you've already done some work and perhaps you've, especially if you've already written it up somewhere, or you've had to, you've applied for funding and you've got a proposal or something, or you've written a report. Maybe you've written a report about an activity you've undertaken or a service you've provided, or I don't know, something, an initiative you have, you've been leading. Often you have to write a report on that, don't you, for management. So if you've already done that, you could probably do that in about a day. Otherwise, if you're doing it from scratch, probably take you a couple of days. I mean, especially if it's, an abstract rather than a proposal. Proposals take longer because, they are often, as I say, more academic. So you need references and you need support from literature. So you'd probably have to do a little bit of literature searching. But for an abstract, you could probably do it in a couple of days, I'd have thought. Of course, then you may want to show it to somebody else. So you need to leave a little bit of time for that. And I always think it's good to write something, leave it for a day or so, and then go back to it, yeah, and see if it makes sense to you anew. So yeah, so I'd leave a few days with all these other little, checking with a colleague, rereading it. I'd leave a few days. Oh, writing together, that's very interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure how, I mean, generally when I've written abstracts or proposals with colleagues, one of us writes it and then sends it to the other to, you know, sometimes we might write it and say, need something else in here, yeah? Put a comment, need something else here, or can you add to this, yeah? But generally one of us does a first draft and then sends it to somebody else for checking or perhaps adding, as I say, certain aspects. So yeah, would that work, do you think, Donna? I think somebody has to take the lead. I mean, I think writing by committee is quite difficult. So I think somebody, somebody has to take the lead, and maybe they say, you know, you can leave sections, highlight or put it in brackets. I'm not quite sure what we did here. You took the lead on this. Can you do this bit, you know, or something like that. Yeah. So asking for their contributions on particular aspects. Oh, you had quite different writing styles. Well, I suppose that if you've got quite different you need to adjust your writing style to the style of the conference, don't you? Yeah. So if you can find previous abstracts or have a look on the website and see, you know, is it a little bit more formal, or can you use informal language, and adjust yourself to that rather than perhaps adjusting yourself to each other's style. Yeah. All right, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, you could do that. You could both have a go and then mix them together. The only thing is I've become quite proprietorial, I think, about the bits I've written. I don't know if I like my bit better. Yeah, you might have a problem like that. But if you get, yeah, that is quite difficult as well. If you've only just met, if you don't know each other very well, you don't know your styles of working, that's quite difficult. So well done for doing that, Zoe. Any other comments? Do you mean to give you to give? I don't resource. I'm not sure there are that many. I mean, there are lots of resources about writing abstracts for academic conferences, but it's a little bit different. You know, for professional conferences, something like Lianza and IFLA as well. You know, they are essentially practitioner conferences, so you know, they're great for networking and finding out new ideas about what's going on in the profession. They're not particularly academic, and I think a lot of the hints and tips you will find if you do a quick search will be about writing academic abstracts and proposals. So yeah, I mean, you can look at them. Certainly they might give you some quite, you know, some good tips about how to structure and, you know, how long it should be, or how long, you know, what to put first and how to conclude. So they might give you some helpful tips like that. But they are a bit more academic. You know, they talk about, you know, explaining your methodology, and you know, that's often not relevant for a practitioner-based conference. Ah, well, there we are. Yeah, there you go, Helen. Better take that on board and maybe make it clear in the call for papers what the abstract should contain.
Yes, so the comment is for people watching this recording afterwards, that at Lianza conference there's always a few abstracts that promise a really exciting time but don't tell you what it will be about, which makes it difficult to decide on attending the session, which is really true. So yes, I'll take that on board. Maybe we need to get people to resubmit their abstracts with more specifics if it doesn't explicitly say, but then I think sometimes people like to fly by the seat of their pants and don't decide exactly what they're going to present until very shortly beforehand.
Or, as I say, don't quite know what the, we often do that with our research projects. We think we're in the middle of a research project, we haven't finished it yet. By the time the conference comes along, we will have finished it and we will have, so we're writing something kind of vague about our results, and just hoping that that they'll accept our abstract.
Is that an approach that you would recommend?
No, no, not at all. No. Because often, you do get that feedback. Oh, I'd like to know a little bit more about the results, and you think, oh God, we haven't actually gone in, we haven't actually done that yet, So no, it puts you in a bit of a difficult position. No. But sometimes there's a conference you just really want to go to, and you'll try anything. Yeah.
Well, you can't blame a trier, can you?
Yeah.
If anyone has any last questions or comments, now's the time to pop them in the chat. I really hope that some of you have been inspired to submit an abstract for a conference coming out of this, and perhaps if any of you want to get in touch with each other and support each other to write some abstracts coming up, if you email helen@lianza.org.nz and put your name forward to share with the others, then happy to help facilitate getting people together, because I think sometimes it's it helps to be in with some peers sometimes, doesn't it? I think that just leaves me to say thank you so much, Anne. I thought that was really, really helpful. And I just would like to finish on a karakia. Can you all see that? Kua mutu a mātou mahi, mo tēnei wā, manakitia mai mātou katoa, o mātou hoa, o mātou whānau, ai ki te aorangi. Our work is finished for the moment, so bless us all, our colleagues, our family, and peace to the universe. Thank you, everybody.
Kia ora.
Thanks, Anne. That was
good. Yeah. So I forgot, of course, that it was recorded, so I didn't read out the questions. Do you ever copy the chat? You can't. Can we?
I do have a copy of the chat. I think most of the time, I was sort of looking at that and sort of